Okay. Are we going?
Yep.
Yes, we're going. All right, excellent. So even before we started recording, Brad and I started this conversation, Terrence, about associates. Um, where to begin, right? I guess I'll say in 38 years, I had five associates. Um, I guess they ran the gamut, huh? I had from guys and gals that could barely talk about chiropractic to those that I mean they were just super hot and uh, obviously didn't stay because they went and did it on their own, right? And everything in between. So I guess really my question for you two guys is what do we expect from an associate? If we go looking for an associate, what did you expect your associate to be and to do for you? Because I can tell you most guys and gals go out looking for an associate for somebody to be, I don't know, you tell me.
Well, I think the three major things that someone wants an associate for is one is they need help with the practice. They can't run it by themselves. They want more freedom to take vacations, take time off, and they want to serve more people and they want to have more income. I mean, that's the reason why most doctors have an associate. At least the successful ones, the ones that struggle are the ones that are looking for an associate to help bring in enough money to keep their practice going.
Mm.
Practice isn't strong enough, so they're saying, well, if I bring another doctor in there, we're going to see more patients, we're going to make more money. But that is
Yeah, right.
that's a
That's like a
systematic
marriage
failure.
failing, and they think if they have another kid, it'll bring the marriage back together. But
Exactly, exactly. So
you
you got to
know,
have a level of practice that makes it and a practice worth um, reproducing or simulating, so that you can do it. I was telling you, I had a conversation with Noel Lloyd from Five Star Management, and that's what he specializes in is attracting, training, and making sure successful associate programs work. And that's one thing. It's got to be a win-win for both the doctor and
mm.
the associate themselves.
Well, I have to say that's a great niche because in my 38 years, I and we talked about this a little bit. Maybe Terrence can follow on this too. Um, I I never I never had an associate that didn't cost me money. Which, as I got older in practice and realized that that was the case, then instead of hiring an associate to help grow the practice, I actually hired them to be technicians and allow me to go out and grow the practice and take more time off. That was I just jumped right to the end of what, maybe where we were going, but where did you fall in this, Terrence? I mean, you guys are two different situations now because your associates were your sons. So, but prior to that,
Yeah, so I've had six. Uh, so that my uh, and so I'm lucky four were family, and then two were not. And I think first, the first one, Jeff, my brother-in-law. Um, I think was mostly just was sort of like told I needed one. Um, and I was lucky that when Jeff came in, when you talk about what I needed somebody to bring was just energy and a willingness to just dive in and enjoy the ride. Because at that time, everybody was, I was the horse,
yeah.
driving the practice and pulling everybody along. So Jeff was a perfect foil. I say his first day I think was the Tuesday after Memorial Day, and so I didn't have any time to train him. We probably had 200 people on the books for the afternoon, and he just dove in. For to his
Hmm.
credit, he just started making phone calls or pulling cards or whatever it might be, and just very quickly dove in and added energy to the practice. So there was no thought that he was going to grow the practice. He was just going to actually wanted to help my brother-in-law out. And
Yeah.
I didn't want any time off. I didn't, I just assumed it was going to create more capacity for the practice. I didn't know how. And he was perfect for that position for the 2 years. And then that set him up. So then, that was for 2 years. Then I had two offices, but Jeff ran the other office.
Hmm.
And then my sister was my second one, who was less of a personality than Jeff, but also knew she was stepping into a high volume situation. And I always say Carrie was perfect. She's actually very quiet, but knew she had to project herself to be a bigger person to be in that role. She was really an ideal associate in that in that role, and then very good at any. That was a little bit of technology was starting with computer programs and
Hmm.
billing, not billing, and then some notes. And anyway, so she was perfect to dive in and absorb a lot of those things. Jeff was good at energy, and if I don't know that we did any outside promotions, but if we did any outside things, he might go out, do a screening. My sister was great at then internal stuff. So we really built the internal of, Mother's Day, Father's Day, all the internal promotional things. Of course, Jeff was with me 2 years. Carrie was with me 10 years, probably.
Mm.
The next two, Brandon, then same thing. I thought I needed to continue to have an associate. So I made the quote, the mistake many chiropractors make. I thought I needed more time off, or that, so you came, and then his probably second year, I think he was there for 2 or 3 years. Then you overpay somebody, you think you need them. I fell in, until then they soil the practice, and go out on bad terms.
Right.
At that point, you regroup, and then I tried again. Dawn referred me to Tim Gober,
Oh
who
yeah, I forgot
was a
about him.
who was a classic then. Leach, right? He, said he would stay. It was like, oh, we got a year, and stayed 4 months. Was just stealing everything that he possibly could. Felt like he learned it all, right? And then he quit while I'm on vacation, right? He called me to, just uh,
Yeah.
so then I went without anybody for X amount of years till Terrence graduated, and then Connor, and that's a whole different thing. Then you're trying to
Yeah,
groom
man.
your son, and to Terrence's credit, he took on everything, and uh, took every bit of this, 8 to 10 years to put himself in a position to be an owner in that aspect. So
How
I
long,
think
how
I
long,
think it
how,
was
how long?
10, 10. He's 10 years now.
10 years.
Yep.
Okay.
So, I mean, and again, that's, and I would, and I know I told him that right around that, in Terrence's case, I think it was delayed because it gave so much, piled so much on. And then certainly COVID probably threw a curve at all of us and things changed. But most associates at that 3 year point think they know more than you. And if you're taking any time off, then if they have a spouse or a significant other, I feel this is they're in their ear saying, you look at you, you're doing all the work, and that's a lot of times where they fall off, or then there's problems, unless you have. I think my sister was great because I don't think she wanted to run a practice in that sense. I mean that as a compliment, and that since her husband was running a practice, right, all those other things, um, and so those are the costs. So I never really hired him for time off, like some of the classic things, like you said. But I also learned no associate will grow your practice, and the fallacy that if you're seeing 300 a week and you bring an associate in and you're like, oh, I'm going to see 600 a week now. If you get 100 visits out of them, you're doing great.
Right. No question.
And the other thing, if they're gonna process new patients, and that's when you need a lot of new patients, Brad, because they're gonna burn through those new patients, right? And you're gonna have to let them. It's a hard
Yep.
thing. And you guys know like with Connor and Terrence, I would laugh that they'd walk out. I've told you this before, and person would walk out, they'd come out and take the file, and just put it in the pile. Oh, nope, didn't close them. And I'm like, did you think about bringing me in to say hello or see, but they have to go through that. I
Have
mean,
to.
hopefully they'll learn from it.
Yeah.
Uh, and they do learn from it, just like we did, right?
Mm.
That you learn from it. But that's why you need a lot of new patients when you have associates.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, if you have two docs and you're both adjusted and you're trying, and you don't have patient, right, that they're the clinics or the office patients, not this doc or this doc, that continuity is on PVA. That's the harder part too, is that's when your PVA will drop, because if you're just flipping back and forth, when you're on your own, you know where every patient is and their
Yep.
care plan or
Yep.
their mood, what words they say. So you're like, whoa, Judy's never said that before. I think I need to see where she's at, whatever it might be, that intuition. So all those things beget, the necessity for more new patients, which we can talk about next time, but also a willingness um, to let them go, to see how they can fly. It's very interesting to watch and participate in.
I think training associates is a huge undertaking, but it's a necessity. If you want a successful associate practice, they have to be able to mimic you in practice. They have to be able to use the same scripting. They have to have the same procedures. We always took the tack that the patients were not his patients versus my patients. They were the practice's patients. And this is how we process them on a day-to-day basis. And we trained hard on that. We trained hard on making sure that there was some continuity so that we didn't run into that. They're not closing them. And we found out why and fixed that as soon as possible. But you're right, you got to let them fail. I mean,
Right.
that's part of the process.
No question.
Yeah, the training thing is hard, right? It's the time and energy, and um, I don't know. I mean, same with staff. It's I at some point you have a limited amount of time. If you're serving a lot of people, that was kind of my dilemma, right? The amount of people you're serving and the amount of trying to protect my energy to serve was how much time was I going to devote to training.
Yeah.
Uh, um, not that we didn't Tuesdays and Thursdays. We were trying to spend some time with it, but also I was probably better in the moment. And I always give my brother-in-law credit. All day long, he just was writing little notes to himself. He'd listen to what I said, and this is what I told him to do. You just got to listen to what I say over and over and over. But I just kept trying to drill it down to the most basic things of, let's check you, and there it is. The basic on the adjustment. Stick to that script. Um, Whether they said the better or worse or the same, that's what I expected. That's good, right? And then tell them the story, right? Why that's good or good. And then with staff, that's why I only worked on the new patient phone call script. If they could do that script, then I could. All the rest were, got a flat tire. Well, we're open till 7. I'm not feeling good. Well, we're open till 7. Whatever.
I feel great.
I'm
Great.
at
We're open till
Great.
7.
We'll
We'll see you before 7.
see you before 7.
Yep.
And if they're going to miss, we'll make that one up tomorrow, and we'll get an extra one next week or whatever it might be. You know, Drilled it back down to. We only had 2 office policies when I first opened, and that was come to a healthcare class in your first month of care, and you miss an appointment, and you make it up within 1 week. That was it. All the other
Yeah.
policies, I don't know where that shit came from over the years. Like, because those two were the best. If I stuck with those,
Yeah. Right.
right? Because
Yeah,
all the accounting stuff that should be taken care of. That's on the side. The real
that's
policies were
funny.
right. And if you
Yeah.
got that healthcare class in, then you're good, right? You just
Yeah.
got that one thing, and
Yeah.
if your staff is just on that, well, and same thing, the staff wasn't on it. I was on it because I knew
Yeah.
everybody's schedule, and if they missed, I knew it, right? I was the one who knew it. So,
You think about that. That's funny. I mean, you just nailed that down. I mean, thinking about it, you make the workshop because if you don't, how are you actually going to know who I am and what we're trying to accomplish? And two, you miss an appointment, you make it up. Those two things are massive, right? You just put them right there.
and I
Yeah.
was always the one asking them to make it up. It wasn't my
Oh
staff.
yeah, absolutely. Well, there was a lot of training. That was one of the biggest things in our office was keeping people in their schedule and making sure they didn't miss appointments. But
Is this a mic drop moment? I mean,
absolutely,
we could probably
absolutely.
click off right now and that's it right now. Make the
Well, you,
workshop, make up your appointments.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
You
you could
think
probably
about that first.
pay for them would be the third one.
Was that?
Make sure you pay for them too.
Yeah, make sure you have a zero balance or your balance is current, right? But if you think about those two things, number one actually supports number two. If they come to the workshop and they listen and they get even an idea of who you are and what chiropractic is, then when they miss an appointment, it's easier to get them to understand why they have to make it up, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah. It's interesting while you were talking, Terrence, I was thinking about my associates. I actually had six, not five. One was there so short, I didn't hardly remember him. Um, of the of the three that are doing well and the two that are killing it, yeah, they were trained very well. But they were trained because they were one was a CA with me for years before we went to chiropractic school. So he spent a ton of time at TLC. So he was trained. And the other one was a TLC member before he even started covering my practice, and he now owns the practice, was trained.
Right.
So I'm thinking about this, Brad, of the four of the six that really kind of shit the bed. I didn't train them. I didn't train them well, and I didn't train them well, Terrence, because my first associate. I asked Ben Lerner one day. I said, "When should I get an associate?" He said, "What you have? What's your volume?" I said, I'm at about 700." He said 200 ago, right? So by the time I got my first associate, my thought process was, we're going to go to 1,000 with him, right? Not the right thought process,
Right.
because they're going to go out and get all these new patients and yada yada, and then they step into this practice, they're overwhelmed, they didn't get trained, and then I'm here saying they cost me money. Well, it's my fault, but they cost me money. Um, they probably would have cost me money anyway, even if they were good, but still,
I
yeah,
remember years ago when we talked
good
about you
train.
getting an associate because you held off for a long time
I did, I did.
because you didn't want to bother training them because you just like, hey, just
No,
do what I do and you'll be fine.
yeah, that doesn't work.
Unfortunately, that's not a win-win proposition.
We're kind of worked with Molly, if you remember Molly.
Yeah.
Molly was an enigma, man. She just walked in and just soaked it all up and just kind of took over. And then after 10 months, she said, yeah, she wanted to move on.
Well, it's interesting.
Well, here's the thing. It's just my fault because in the training, I told her, look, you want to practice where you want to raise your children.
you'd rather have that. You'd rather have them be
I
honest with
know.
you
But I
than
believe that to be true, right? I do
right.
believe that to be true, or close to where you want to raise your kids. So I was like, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, I don't want to raise children here." I'm like, "Where do you want to raise children?" And I think she's in LA. So there you go.
Wow. There you go.
So, so where do we fall in this associate thing? I mean, if you had to say your ideal associate prior to your two children, right?
Right.
What would they look like?
Well, I always have told the people who've come by the office, and I feel like I did this for my dad, that you really should, and I've asked, I think my sister did this for me. I'm thinking Jeff might have, but they should be able to write down all they should have two lists. The list of what they want from you, which should be very short, and the list of what they're going to do for you should be very long. And I had a woman stop by recently, and that was a few months. I think I told you guys about her, and she was very enthusiastic. And I asked her, I said, "You should do this and send it to me." And she did. I mean, she wrote
Yeah.
like she did a terrible job, and I'm sure she got an associateship, and good for her. But I
Yeah.
told her, I said, you should write down everything you're going to do for the doc. So I'm going to take the trash out. I'm going to sweep the floor. I'm going to answer the phone. I'm going to learn how
Change
to
the
do
light
front desk.
bulbs.
I'm going to collect money. And the only things you want from the doc are then, teach me how to process a new patient, teach me how to adjust better, have us, maybe 10 things
That's
versus a
great.
bunch of things.
Yeah.
And the problem is, and because I can remember an associate stopping me at Schofield seminar. This is some time ago. I hadn't been, so let's just say it's 15 years ago. And she had switched from one office to a friend of mine's, right? And was telling me, it was like, oh, I just hated it at that other office. And I've shared this story before. I said, well, what were you doing at the other office? Well, new patients and reports and x-rays and some adjusted whatever. And I was like, well, isn't that's what you got to do everywhere?
Yeah.
Well, it just didn't. I'm like, no, that's the job.
Yeah.
It just was, how are you, the approach in her mind, like, oh, this doc's just nicer. I mean, that's how I took it.
Mm.
And it's like, okay, but it's
Yeah.
still the
Mm.
same thing. That's the job. And the people coming out, they want to define the job that they want to do versus this is the
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
Right.
And all of us were like, I'm just happy to have a job, first of all. And and then when you open on your own, which is a whole nother
Whew.
ball game from scratch, is the urgency to build it and to pay your
Yeah.
bills.
Yeah.
And as we've discussed before, that your purpose evolves from that. Your first purpose when you open on your own is, holy crap, I got to pay the
I gotta
rent,
pay bills.
right? And it can evolve and be bigger and bigger from that. But um,
Yeah.
they're
But
coming in with we all talk about that it's the debt,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's dry, but it's the same thing. That's the job. If that's what it costs, then 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 try to limit your cost, right?
Yeah.
Either ask mom and dad for help, you
Get a
know,
job.
get a job while you're there, right? I mean, when we went to school, it was like the red badge of courage of how shitty a car you had,
Yeah.
that you knew where the happy hours were, where they had free
Free
wings, and
food.
you could walk out with them in your pockets, for gosh sakes.
Yeah.
How to live off a head of cabbage and
And
rice
potatoes.
and potatoes for a week,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, all that stuff, and
Yeah. And yeah, get a job and stop borrowing money.
take the least that you can, or
Hmm.
what's the least I can live off of
Yeah. Yeah.
versus uh,
Unfortunately, this generation is more interested in avocado toast and nice cars and not living like a college student. I've run across a number of people that have borrowed themselves into some crazy debt
Yeah.
because they couldn't live a healthy a frugal lifestyle.
So our pool of associates has changed, that's for sure.
yes,
Yeah. Which makes me think that somebody once said to me, I don't remember who it was, but they said if you're looking for the ideal associate to stay, it would be somebody that's a little bit older, right? Somebody who has failed in practice.
yeah, I told you that.
Was it you?
Yep. Because one of the
I
best.
have to tell you,
Yeah,
Jason will probably hear this, and he will tell you he treated his practice like a what was his a hobby, and it just kind of failed. And he came in and he got some training. He remembered his training, and yeah, changed. He changed, right?
Yeah.
But
One
that
of my
that
one, yeah, one of my dad's best friends, I mean, Dr. Shartino, who had a great associate, and I remember talking to him about it, and he said the reason he's a good associate is he failed in practice,
yeah, yeah,
and he's in a
Realizes how hard it is,
yep,
yeah.
yep,
And
is
pays
willing to give
attention
the
and
help.
listens, and at least with Jason's decides to, to do the work, right? So, and I have to tell you, as me being an associate, I was with Sharon Gorman for a year. I look back on it and I didn't think I was a shitty associate, but I look back in it in hindsight and I wasn't great. I had good hands and I had principle and could talk chiropractic, but man, I didn't get outside that practice and do anything to grow it. I didn't do probably 40% what she asked me to do. And and it's interesting. And when I left there, I don't think it was a sense of feeling bad or guilt or whatever, but it was probably years before I would pick up the phone and talk to her about something, whether it was something in the practice or how my numbers were going, or treated her like and she always thought of me as an equal, right? And it was probably years, 3, 4, 5 years before I would call her and chat with her like I do you guys. And I don't know what that is, but I've seen that happen with my associates too. They'd leave and it would be years before I'd hear from them. It was kind of like when they were hitting their stride and doing well, that maybe they could come back, or when they found their light. I don't know. I don't know. But it's a strange phenomenon.
Was probably due to the fact that they started remembering what you were trying to teach them at that time. And then they
Yeah, isn't that
realized
crazy?
that if I'd done this before, it would have been quicker
I think that's the
turnaround.
case. Yep. Yep. And there's a little bit of pride in calling back and getting an attaboy. I don't know. I don't know. But I've seen with all of them. The only one that didn't do that was Mark. Mark didn't do that. Um, I can tell you, Blaine, when he left, Dr. Blaine, he called maybe a month after, and he's asked me about the day one scripting. I'm like, dude, you were here 20 months. What do you? He said, well, I had decided I was going to do it different. And then he got out after a month and realized that it wasn't going to work.
right.
Then we got him squared away, and although we've been friends since we were like 15, I didn't hear from him for years. Yeah, here and there. But it's weird, right? It's a weird phenomenon.
I know Dr. Blaine and yeah, I could see
Not
that.
not just with him. I'm talking all of them.
Oh,
You know?
okay.
Yeah, yeah. Not just him,
You know,
except for Mark.
I had an associate who was older, had failed in practice, and when he first came in, he did a phenomenal job. I mean, it was unbelievable. The unfortunate thing is he had a lot of personal issues going on
Baggage.
that hindered his growth and eventually led to his leaving the practice. Um, but I was in that point where in my stage of my career, what I was doing, I needed somebody in there. So we
Mhm.
looked the other way a lot of times, or worked to did a workaround so that he could stay in the practice, so I wouldn't lose him. Uh, it was a challenge over the years. It was a challenge nonetheless. So
I'm thinking about Jason and Jason, Dr. Jason, he's hitting a stride now. It's been what? I've been out, he's completely out of the office for what, 3 years? Maybe a little over 3 years. And I feel like he's in a groove. Like his numbers are up, his PVA's up, he's training his team. Um, I don't know. Maybe they need to shake the stink of the old guy that just left.
I think they just have to realize that they have to implement what we've tried,
I think so.
and
Yeah.
and I know Dr. Jason's a wonderful guy, great chiropractor.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
just was a late bloomer, you
Yeah,
know.
I think they're in the slipstream of the practice of the older chiropractor, and then when when we bail out, then they have to take the headwind for a while before they,
Sure.
they find their stride, their breath, and whatever. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I
I
mean,
see
yeah,
Sam
I
going
mean,
through that now.
Terrence has done great. I have no,
yeah,
and we're there to answer and help any way we can, and uh, yeah, but and same, it's different as a parent, maybe a little bit that you don't want them to struggle to be successful. And I think the hope more so, well, I think at this point, Mike, you would have it that I want him to be more successful than me. I'd
yes,
love to see the practice do better. I don't know, you never know if that's possible.
but they're not us, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to do better financially because he's better at that sooner than I ever was.
Isn't that funny? Jason is too.
Yeah, I mean, because they're well, and again, for Terrence that, and I told you guys this, whether it's, I said, I shared with him all the mistakes I made, or he got to witness so in his time before we transitioned all, even if it's the perception of the mistakes I was making of, right, um, people not paying or, loaning patients money, right, things
Yeah,
like
Ooh,
that, all, take your pick. But I even said when he remodeled the office, I said, "You're lucky. You got to see the office was this way. Then I remodeled it again,
hmm,
and again, So I said, you got to see different versions that you're like, oh, I like this. I don't like this.
yeah,
This I don't like this. I said, I was kidding. I said, you're welcome.
yeah,
I said,
yeah,
so again, when we talk about standing on shoulders of giants, those parts are forgotten so
yeah,
much, that
yeah, yeah.
uh,
Don't you wish?
I'm so because you guys know, I'm very transparent on that
Yeah,
stuff. I'm like, I screwed this up.
hmm,
Maybe I tell him all the time, he's better. I don't want this to sound bad. He doesn't have the heart style practice that I did. And that's good.
yeah,
It's good and bad at the same time. He probably will never have the PVA I had, or it'll take him longer to get there. I think he will, or it'll come just differently,
yeah.
and that's okay.
That's
But
okay.
uh, we were, I was definitively of the heart generation
Me
of
too.
practice, and I think that's the biggest difference. These newer, they don't have. We used to joke about it. We should have a seminar. Jeff and my brother. We say the title of it's going to be "We Care, but Not That Much."
We talk about this, don't we, Brad?
And uh, I think Terrence he's way better at it. I think he still gets hurt. He probably wouldn't display it as much as I did. But
Yeah,
plus, I've been in his ear. If you just get 10 new patients every week, you keep doing what you're doing, you will either grow or at least hold, the practice at the
yeah.
levels it's doing. And he's
Don't
he's he's committed to that.
don't you wish? I wish this with Jason, Dr. Jason, and I'm sure he'll see this. Don't you wish that sometimes instead of them trying to figure things out on their own, they would just call and ask you, right?
that's
I
the
mean,
conversation we've had.
I know on some level he knows that I've been through probably everything that he's going through, right? And yet he'll tell me afterwards how he struggled with something when I probably had a way of helping him, or maybe just flat giving him an answer. But
It's ego. Mostly it's ego.
yeah,
And
from having a parking lot paved to adjusting a C3 retrolithesys, yeah, whatever it is, I've probably been through it.
Well,
Now I understand,
don't you wish that with your kids?
huh?
Don't you wish that with your children?
Oh, geez, yeah, I don't even want to go. Yeah, no
But
question.
some
I know, I
never
know.
a prophet in your own country. That's
Isn't that the truth? It really
you can
is.
tell somebody else outside it, but in your own country, now
Listen,
you have to leave Galilee to go to
couldn't
That's
go and ask
interesting.
my dad these things because one, he wasn't a chiropractor, he didn't go to college, and he wasn't as smart as me. Ah!
Same thing. I was very lucky.
Is
I,
yeah, in
I called
hindsight, he was brilliant.
I called my dad every day, right? I was
Yeah.
kid, the last 10 years of his life, 10 or more years, I called him every 15,
Oh,
20 years,
I
you
saw
know.
my
God, I
dad every
wish I
day.
had that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
but the other side of that coin is, and this is why the three of us are different, is I know a lot of coaches who would say, don't reinvent the wheel, do what I did or do. However, a lot of those coaches don't want you to do as good as they did.
yeah,
And
never thought about that.
and that's a problem because they want, some of these guys that are out there that saw big numbers, but then they just want their clients to see 300 a week. They don't want
Yeah.
any of their clients to outshine them. And Mike, you're not that way. I'm not that way. I'm like, go for it, dude.
Please do better than I
Yeah.
did.
I,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't
Please.
care. Like
Please see more
anybody who
people.
serve more people. I mean,
Yeah.
I
um,
Look,
think that's
and
where it boils down to, is that we were always in that level of service. We were more concerned about transforming people's lives than having a transaction financially, you know. I mean, we
mhm.
got to keep people in fair exchange. It's obvious, but I think today's generation, from what I can tell, not just is that they're more interested in making the money and having the time off than
Yeah.
serving people. And that's where our experience comes into play. We
Well,
want to guide
yeah.
people to serve more people.
Yeah. Well, we got into this thing because we were passionate about chiropractic. We weren't passionate about our bank accounts. It wasn't a job or a career for us. It was a calling. So, you know.
we we were all taught. We all knew when you become a chiropractor. It's like I said, what Greg Stanley said. You're going to be able to rent anything you want for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and then get back to work
Right.
for 6 to 12 months so you can
Right.
go do it again. And so all these consultants, same thing. They're all lying. I keep saying that because many of them did not make their money in chiropractic. So, whether it's the Dan Sullivans who practiced for 5 years and he's out, and now, then he's a health entrepreneur. He's not a chiropractor.
I know he changed that. Yep.
Dr. Axe never says he's a chiropractor. There, who was that? There's somebody. It's like there's so many. They never say they're chiropractors. Oh, that freaking Clint Steele.
I don't
He
know.
was he was good. He talked about PVA, and now he's pain the brain.
Yeah, I know that
He
person.
popped up on Instagram, and it's the same. It's like, I'm a nervous system specialist, and it's
Yeah.
like,
People don't
you
want
know,
to hear that.
it's just
No, I don't want
infuriating
to hear that.
because then they're selling, or
Yeah.
they're looking for likes,
Yeah.
or and
I know. I
it's
know.
well, I asked. I'm sorry, we're off topic, but I asked about that trauma, toxins, and thoughts quote, Mike,
Right.
because that Peter Attia, the MD guy, he's very
Hmm.
popular, was talking about low back pain and how, the emotional concept of, how it contributes to low, that some people who had low back pain and got PT and talk therapy did better than people who just got the PT. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, right.
Palmer talked about this over 100 years ago.
Hmm.
And I'm going to say it again. We need a group of chiropractors. I always say, maybe we could write it, but then we need the guys like I will say the Mike Halls or the Carricks or whoever the smart guys are to put some references on there for us
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
respond to every one of these things.
Yeah.
Everyone, same thing. You see, I have this love hate relationship with Scientific American. It's a great read sometimes, and then all of a sudden they'll pull out just just like stuff like that, like, oh, social isolation with men, right? That's a big.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding me? You're going to train bartenders to be social therapists? Tell them to go to the chiropractor once a week.
Yeah.
Right? not only does that create physical and mental change and release
Yeah,
subluxation, but then the doc, if he's a good doc or she's a good doc, is going to connect with that person, and they know they got somebody who cares for them. The
yeah,
love level of practice, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah. It was
You know,
1909 DD, by the way, but they're still arguing the semantics. But that's the first time it was written.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Other people take
I don't
credit for that.
think.
That's not the
Huh?
first person who said that trauma
No, it
talk.
wasn't the first person who said it, but
No,
in
I mean it's other
chiropractic
people.
literature, that was the first time it was written. The semantics were different, the wording was a little different, but that's basically what was said. But it was Barge who actually changed it to
Thoughts.
yeah, the three T's. So
But what I'm saying is there's a whole slew of people now
yeah,
taking credit for that in the medical
I
world.
know, I know.
Oh, yeah.
And
That's what I love. Look, I love chiropractic. I love our profession. Obviously, there are things about it we don't love. But I love listening to the historians because there's a big historical group of people out there now, just going through all the literature and how passionate about they are and how they dig into it, and I so appreciate it. But it's not gonna increase my PVA. Can it lend to some table talk? Yes. But I love the passion behind it because that's
sure.
just energy and it's just chiropractic energy. I love the research guys. I love Harrison and I love the fact that they have some minor research that shows that what do you call it? The telomeres length grows after the adjustment, or that the
Cervical.
EKG changes,
Yeah.
or whatever. I love that stuff. Does it lend to my table talk? Yeah, it does. Increase the PVA tangentially, maybe, but the
I would argue
philosophy.
that I would argue those conversations you have with your patients does drive your PVA.
Well, I would tangentially. I do. I'm not saying that it doesn't. I'm just saying that those things, although personally I love them, the thing that drives my PVA is bottom line, the philosophy, the simple cycle. You know, the power that made the body heals the body. It's just me. That's what drives me. Um,
But you just said it. It's you. Your PVA is driven by you,
yeah, yeah,
by
yeah,
the
yeah.
doc, and their and what they see.
Hmm.
Like how saying how often would they get cared for? How do you take care of your family? What do you are you
Yeah.
practicing
No, look,
what
I
you
know it's
preach?
me.
Right? All those things. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
So
you.
the
because
hope
I mean,
is that we take this information, and if we have an associate, is that we train them and guide them to use the same mentality, the thought process. Now, does it
mhm.
always hit? Probably not. But what you do is you act as a coach and a mentor to that person, not just an employer. It goes beyond giving somebody a job and telling them to go out to do it. It's to help guide them through the process. That's when successful associateships happen.
Yeah. So
Well, yeah. I mean, and unsuccessful ones, because if same with patients, you're always trying to do that, right?
yeah,
You're always trying to share your mission and purpose and passion. And there's when you take it in the chops, you can't just say, well, I'm done with that, right? You got to get up and do it again, and then do it
yeah,
again, and then
yeah,
do it
right,
again.
right.
And that's probably still the hardest, not the hardest thing. It wasn't hard at the time, but it's like I said, death by a million cuts. I still think of your uncle, let's say that that he was done 10 years before he was done. That he he kept lecturing because he had to, not because he
Yeah,
wanted. I still
yeah.
I still feel that there was some of the times, yes, but on the whole he would have liked to just do
He'd
his
rather been at
reading.
home.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
he'd rather
just
been at home.
relax.
That
He
those
gave.
are those last few years at seminars, that was the thing that I would hear from him most when I'd go, up to him, and he would say, "Yeah, I'm ready to go home. I just want to go home." You know. Now he loved his time on the stage. He loved talking philosophy. He loved it, but
Yep.
it was, I think it became a labor and not a labor of love at times. So
Correct. Like all of us can go in the office
all
and
of us,
you can switch on the switch that you had on for
yeah,
40, 42 years, but that's so when I go in tomorrow, there's a moment where I just want to go home,
Yeah, 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 me too.
and
Yep, yep.
it's it's okay. It's nice to have this platform to try to share. And
Hmm.
as you guys saw my frustration in the email a couple weeks ago, that it's it's where do you go with all of it? At some point, you just got to be like, hey, you know what? I did it. And
Yeah.
if somebody asks me a question, like you're saying, something will come out. And
Well, that's the whole point to this, isn't it?
yep,
Yeah. Yeah.
yep,
It's
yep,
funny is although, we ramble on here, certainly in this 50 minutes, there's answers in what we just said for people out there if they
yep.
want to sit and listen. And we did a lot of rambling and we talked about some things that, you know, didn't aren't going to hit, right? But between the three of us, I think we have a lot to offer and a lot of answers, you know? So,
Well, we'll keep refining our process and
yeah.
refining our messaging
Hmm.
and reach as many as we can, you
Yeah.
know?
Yep.
I listen, my takeaway today is and I won't probably ever be hiring another associate, but my takeaway from this was I needed to find somebody that could train me how to hire and how to train an associate. That my experience in doing so wasn't enough to do it the right way. Um, but through attrition and time, I did get two really good ones towards the end there. So,
Right.
but I think if somebody is looking now, they'd be smart to go find somebody that has an associate driven program that is in line with their philosophies and then train the associate that way if they're serious about it.
I agree. I agree. I tried to do all of it by
100%.
myself. Yeah, I didn't have anybody helping me ever. Yeah. So,
No, me either.
100%.
um,
I had a couple, I worked with Bob Hoffman for a while and Tom Clapp helped me with associates. Um, and that really got my thought process training from being to be a coach, to
Yeah.
to lean on my background as a coach and try to coach them to
Yeah.
higher levels. So, but
And
you're right.
TLC didn't have the associate driven practice program until I was, wasn't hiring any more associates.
Right.
Um, so that came late. Did Fred have anything,
no,
Terrence?
not
No.
really. Just his personal experience, right? He
Right.
had different people in, but no. And he certainly doesn't now. I don't think not anything of
Mhm.
any significance. I think Noel Lloyd probably has
Probably.
the
Yeah.
better ones out there. I know Noel from 40 years ago.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
um, when he
Well,
was with
there's two right there
Allstate.
you can look at, right?
Yeah.
You can
Yep,
look at Noel Lloyd's or you can look at TLC's associate
TLC.
driven practice if somebody's interested. But I,
yep,
I would that's what I would recommend that you look at them, decide what fits, and then learn before you try to teach.
yeah. Don't look for them to grow your practice. Maybe they'll
No,
grow you. Yeah.
they'll grow you, right? They will grow you. Don't look for them to grow your practice, and don't look for them to make you money.
Yep. Yeah, it takes 2 years for them to make you money,
Yep.
Yeah,
right?
I
yep.
agree with that.
And that's typically when they're going to go, right? Unless you're looking for that one to keep.
Yep, agreed.
So,
Agreed. So,
and
Yeah,
if that's the
you
case,
have
go
a
look
plan,
for
you'd
that
have a
older guy, that
plan
gal
and
that's failed. Huh?
you have a plan in there for extension, like whether they
Hmm.
buy into your practice or whether you open a practice with them and then you sell it to them. I mean, there's models out there
Sure.
that can work. You just have to have a plan and then work the plan
Right. Right.
right, right.
Excellent.
and not
Well,
be afraid to of failing. You know,
So true. So
yeah.
true.
Well, I
Definitely.
love talking to you guys,
All right, guys.
yeah,
and I guess we'll talk in two
You new
weeks or
patients. Yeah.
in
new
2 weeks
patients.
and we'll go from there. We'll talk about new patients. All right. Have a great
All right. All
weekend,
right,
guys.
guys.
Thank you for your time.
Um,